This Scorpio full moon is bringing up all sorts of agitation and anticipation in the struggle of nihilism versus hope during these extremely turbulent times on Earth. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Hummingbird Arcana Podcast. I'm Jo Hummingbird. I'm an Evolutionary Astrologer, Usui Reiki Master, and a Tarot and Oracle Specialist. I'm here to awaken you to your Cosmic Divinity, and today I have an episode pertaining all to the Scorpio Full Moon that we have upcoming on Friday, May 1st. And this is going to be a little bit less quote-unquote active of a full moon with the aspects between the planets and the luminaries and what we have going on. But there are a lot of different cosmic conversations to be had. It's not that there aren't any aspects, but rather there are certain relationships that are happening between deacons, the positions of the planets and the luminaries themselves, and their conditioning based on dignity or debility. So if you're interested in hearing all about this Scorpio full moon, then keep on listening to this episode of Hummingbird Arcana. If you're curious to see how this Scorpio full moon will activate your natal chart and influence your energy this go around, then check out my lunar luminosity reading where I will help you look into how this full moon will personally be impacting you, along with insight on how to integrate the energy for the day before, the day of, and the day after the full moon itself. This is the perfect reading to get if you want to align your energy and your life with the natural cycles of the moon and work with her astrological archetypes. So head to the link in the description box or in the show notes below to book a lunar luminosity reading of your very own. Now, back to Hummingbird Arcana. So like I mentioned in the intro of this episode, this Scorpio full moon does happen on Friday, May 1st, and this will be happening at exactly 12:22 p.m. Central Standard Time. So do the conversions for the time zones wherever you are, but this is when it will be happening, and this is going to be with the sun at 11 degrees Taurus and 20 seconds, exactly opposite the moon at 11 degrees Scorpio and 20 seconds. So this is the axis of the senses, of resources, of the material realm. We move from the birth point of Aries and into the place of Taurus with the sun, and this lights up the physical world, the land, the food that we eat, the clothes that we wear, the way that we treat our bodies and nourish it, not in the same way that Cancer or Virgo would, but in the more primordial way, in a more animalistic nature type way, where we're tuning back into the ways in which we develop our senses early on in this life, and Taurus is the sign of the toddler. And this is not necessarily always a bad way, but with Taurus in particular, that toddler essence being, everything being so raw and new and stimulating in different ways when we enter the world. And with the Scorpio axis with Taurus here, this is not only just the material realm, but it's also the psychology behind it, the development, the stimulation, the mindset, the greed, the corruption in the shadow frequencies. And with the moon in Scorpio, the moon is in fall in the sign of Scorpio. The moon is already debilitated in any Martian sign just by its conditioning. Like we had the Aries new moon just recently happen. So we're having both of the Martian sign moons back to back this year. And in previous years, you've maybe seen the Venusian moons back to back, where we have a Taurus new moon followed by a Libra full moon followed by a Taurus new moon. And this year, we are having the opposite. We're having an Aries new moon followed by a Scorpio full moon. And when the moon was in Aries conjunct the sun, the moon was debilitated then. Here we are with another Martian moon sign. The moon is going to be debilitated further because this is not only just a debilitation position for the moon, but this is the moon's fall position. This is where emotions, the subconscious, the intuition go deep, deep, deep into the psyche and not necessarily lose all control, but it loses a little bit of its structure. It loses a little bit of its nuance. It loses a little bit of its watery nature, even though you would think that with Scorpio being a water sign and the moon being ruled by Cancer, a fellow water sign, that this would be a very watery juicy, beautiful place for it to be. But again, it is in fall. This is where the moon goes to the deepest, darkest depths of the psyche to be able to extract the medicine of the shadow, to be able to extract the lessons that we learn from making mistakes, where we become our own worst enemy. This is why the moon is in fall in Scorpio. It is already debilitated in a Martian ruled sign, but in Scorpio in particular, this is the sign of psychology, of the taboo, of occultism, of esoterica, of sex, of things that make people uncomfortable, that are hidden in the dark, that not always want to come to the surface, but might have to for the sake of moving forward, or for evolution, or for the better of all people, or the betterment of the planet, of livelihood altogether. And Scorpio is also ruled by Pluto. So this is, Mars is the traditional ruler, and then Pluto is the modern ruler. So this is a double whammy here. This is Mars, the planet of conflict, and this is Pluto, the planet of death, rebirth, and transformation. So there's a lot of emotional agitation that can be brought up during this time. This is a pretty disturbing place for the moon to be. It's not like when the moon is in detriment in Capricorn, or debilitated also in Aquarius by Saturnian rulership, but this is the place where emotions can tend to get lost in the density of reality. There is that similar theme with the Saturnian detriment in Capricorn and the debilitation by Saturn position in Aquarius, but this goes even deeper. This can be a little bit more, for the lack of a better term, traumatic. This can bring up traumas. This can resurface things that we didn't really have the capacity to be handling right now. At least when the moon is in detriment in Capricorn or debilitated in Aquarius, this gives us a little bit more structure with that Saturnian energy to be able to handle that. Even if it is hard, even if it does suck, even if it does put a lot more mileage on the meter, so to speak. But with it being in fall in Scorpio, this is like a shock factor. This is the disturbance. It's not chaos in the same way that Uranian influence of Aquarius would be. This is chaos in the sense of a Martian position for it. This is things get shaken up. Things are not easy to handle. Things are not fun to handle. There's nothing super, super, super fun about Mars, other than whenever there's victory involved, or there's a bit of the defense of honor, rather, from the enlightened frequency in Mars. But in all of the tumultuous energy that we've been seeing with all of the planets that we have going on in Aries, Mars currently in Aries, the ruler of this moon, this is in its domicile sign. And we had that happen with the Aries new moon as well. But with that being said, the moon in a Martian sign, while Mars is in a sign of its own domicile, really ramps up the Martian implication of conflict, aggression, war, combativeness, anger, destruction. There's a lot of that going on. And with this being over in Scorpio, the water side of Mars, I want you to think of the planet Mars very quickly. What water exists on Mars? Only the ice caps that are at the poles. There, or at least right now from a scientific standpoint, there isn't any body of water on Mars. It's too dry, it's too arid, and maybe billions of years ago that was different. But now in modern times, in the present day, that doesn't exist other than in the form of frozen solid rock sheets of ice and mineral deposits, and in different bacteria. We could get very nitty gritty and nerdy and geeky there. But with that being said, think of that with the water energy of Mars being icy, being cold, being rigid, being frozen, being very rock solid. There's not a whole lot of room for malleability. There's not a lot of room for there to be something flowing in the way that Pisces or Cancer, as other water signs, would be. Now, with that being said, I want to talk a little bit about the aspects that we do have going on with other planets, other luminaries, other things like that. So Mercury is exactly conjunct Chiron at 27 degrees of Aries. And the reason that this is important is because, again, Mars, the ruler of this Scorpio moon, is over in its home sign of Aries. And with Chiron and Mercury both being there together, they're not conjunct Mars, but they're being activated by the double Martian energy of Mars being in its home sign of Aries, alongside Chiron and Mercury already being in Aries. With Mercury being conjunct Chiron by exact degree at 27 degrees of Aries, this creates an emotional disturbance to the wounded healer archetype, but this puts it into the mental space. It's not just in the psychosomatic place of I feel it in my body, even though this is on the Scorpio Taurus axis, so you likely will feel this in your body, especially with all the Mars energy activating it and agitating it. But with Mercury's influence here, this creates a lot more mental intensity behind that. This could be a lot more for people who struggle with different mental health or perceived quote unquote disorders. There are so many different ways that that can manifest. And for example, I do have autism and ADHD. So that could be, a lot more shutdowns or a lot of executive dysfunction or pathological demand avoidance, depending on the situation or who's around. Like that's just for me, my example of what would apply to me and my conditioning. But with other people with other conditions or disorders or any sort of mental disturbances that aren't easy to handle or that are perceived outside of what is the realm of neurotypical, this can be a very challenging moon for those people, especially. I mean, it's going to be challenging for all of us because we are all affected by the impact of these planets, of the luminaries, of the astrology, of it all. But people who are not in a neurotypical state of operation, they will be highly impacted by this moon, just flat out. And with Chiron, the wounded healer, this will make some people who even are just going through a hard time, who may be even neurotypical, who don't struggle with mental health like that, they might feel very debilitated. They might feel like, oh my gosh, like not necessarily imposter syndrome, that's not the right term, but rather sort of this lack of capacity to handle what is being thrown at them and what is happening in the world. There is, with Scorpio, this, again, sense of greed, of corruption, of conniving, of mischief. And particularly when the moon is in fall in Scorpio, this places an emotional sense of like lack of control, of lack of influence, a lack of ability to have a say, or even in certain regards, like a free will choice to be able to respond to the corruption and the greed and the manipulation of what is happening in the world, especially in the realm of politics, because Scorpio is one of the very many influences of politics and astrology. Like Libra is obviously a diplomatic sign. It's the sign of the scales. It's like, associated with the justice card in Tarot. And then you have Scorpio, which is the death card. And obviously, with the corruption, the greed, the resources, other people's money, that kind of archetype of Scorpio, those two signs being right next to each other, of course, that's going to have to do with politics. And so a lot of what is happening right now will feel like there's a certain level of it that is out of your control, despite everything that you're doing to try to respond differently or make better choices or align your moral compass with a better world and with more morally aligned companies, people, organizations, places, forms of transportation, using your dollar to vote. Like, there are so many different ways in which we can try to make a change and make impact, especially under the umbrella of capitalist systems that are trying to oppress us rather than uplift us. And this full moon is going to be lighting up all the places in which we feel powerless in that context. And with that being said, this is also going to be amplified because Venus is over in Gemini, and Gemini is one of the ruling signs of Mercury, and Venus is also the ruler of the Sun in Taurus currently. So this is like mind, body, spirit being triggered, activated, agitated by all of this energy. And it's not going to be easy to navigate. It's nowhere near as difficult as that Aries new moon that we just had. Goddess bless. But at the same time, this still is very difficult. This is rather incapacitating to the nervous system and to mental health and to a sense of internal well-being, because this is Scorpio. It's very deep, it's very internal, very intrinsic, rather than Aries energy, which is very outward, very loud, very in all places at all times. It's associated with like the Big Bang in astrology as well, because it goes from the portal of, the endings and the returning to source energy of Pisces, then right into the birth canal, the void, and straight out the womb into Aries. Boom, bam, right away. So this is softened by the Taurus energy from the season that we will be in. But that does not mean that it's going to be easy. That does not mean that it will feel good to be doing, even though it is slightly softened, and rather not even softened, but just cushioned a little bit by that Venus in Gemini and the Sun in Taurus, but that Mercury conjunct Chiron, the ruler of Gemini, and then it's in Aries, which is ruled by Mars. Mars is in Aries right now. It's the ruler of this moon. There's a lot going on with that conversation in and of itself. And that leads me to the next point, which has to do with Jupiter. And Jupiter is in the sign of Cancer right now, as we know. And it's exalted in Cancer. Great, lovely, beautiful that we have the planet of expansion, of abundance, of blessings, of good fortune, of philosophy, spirituality. We have that exalted in the sign of Cancer, which is intuition, sensitivity, nurturing, caretaking, and this very watery, sensitive energy. We love that. But with that being said, Jupiter is currently in the Pluto-ruled decan of Cancer, and Cancer is the ruler of the moon. And so with the moon being in Scorpio, modernly ruled by Pluto, there's this sort of, not entirely a mutual reciprocity, but there is a reciprocity to be had here between the Pluto-ruled decan of Cancer and a Scorpio moon altogether. So this kind of exacerbates with Jupiter's energy in the Pluto decan. It expands all of the emotional tension, all of the things that easily elicit larger emotions and or larger emotional reactions or responses. And with that being said, this can also have us as a placement here and as an aspect with this moon. Yes, there is an energy trine between Cancer and Scorpio, so there is support, but that doesn't necessarily feel like 100% support. Maybe there is a connection between certain support systems that you have. Maybe you'll talk to your friends. Maybe you can find somebody that you can confide in and trust with your feelings to talk it out, or, just have somebody to vent to, but maybe you don't. And that will be very sensitive. That will be very easily triggered by this full moon. And in particular here, this whole Jupiter in the Pluto decan of Cancer energy with the Scorpio moon, this can really bring up a lot of feelings of nostalgia or reminiscing on better days that have happened in the past, and it's comparing it to the present or the future. And it's like, oh no, I really do miss X, Y, and Z time of my life because it was so much easier, so much better. And you can start to turn into self-deprecation very quickly if you're not careful with this energy. It can be just as supportive as it can be destructive. So I want you to be mindful of that going into this full moon. If you're a beginner in the world of astrology and you don't know where to start with learning about your natal chart, then check out my chart ruler reading. In this reading, I'll help you to identify the planet or luminary that governs the overall energy of your natal chart and break down the nitty-gritty of its condition and placement in your chart, as well as how it impacts you. This is the perfect reading for you if you'd want to dip your toes into the world of astrology without overwhelming yourself with all the other intricacies and complications that can come along with looking at your whole natal chart. So head to the link in the description box or in the show notes below to book a chart ruler reading of your very own. And now, back to Hummingbird Arcana. And the last little point that I want to get at here, or the last two that I want to get at, are Pluto and its conditioning, and then we have Black Moon Lilith that I want to talk about. and then we'll get into some of the themes and we'll dive into that too. But with Pluto, the ruler of this moon, it is creating an energy square by sign with Aquarius and Scorpio. Now, Scorpio being the ruler of Pluto, this is obviously a very fun conversation that we've been having with all of the different Pluto and Aquarius that mentions that I've had throughout all the different newer full moons, or if you checked out the 2026 astrology, things to look out for. I'll link that on a card on the screen if you haven't watched it already, and I'll also put it down below in the description and the show notes if you want to check that out. The astrology to look out for in 2026. We have already hit quite a few of those and checked some of those boxes off, but there's still plenty of information and plenty of transits that are going to be affecting us pretty heavily this year. So check that out if you feel called to. But with this energy square created between Scorpio and Aquarius and Scorpio's modern ruler, Pluto in Aquarius in its fall position, this particular moon, again, will bring up a lot of the corruption and the greed and the anguish that we feel as a people in response to what is going on politically. Aquarius is the sign of the humanitarian, and Scorpio is, in the shadow frequency, it's the manipulator. So with the moon lighting up in a full moon, which is where the moon reflects the most of the sun's light, and the sun being the conscious awareness, the self, the ego, this is where Aquarius, where the sun then kind of goes into opposition, where it is then in detriment, that ego dissolves. The feelings of the manipulators in the world are going to be kind of like they're dragging their heels through the dirt and kicking and screaming like a toddler who doesn't want to leave the toy aisle in the store. So we could watch a lot of these corrupt leaders around the world create a big mess before they're ultimately dragged out of their position of power. We just recently watched in Hungary, we watched their authoritarian leader get ousted and voted out by their people for the first time in 16 years, I believe is the number. If I'm not correct on that, please do correct me in the comments. But I digress. That doesn't necessarily mean that over in the US, everything is going to go fine and dandy and we're going to watch something beautiful happen where the regime that is currently in power gets dismantled. I can only hope and pray and do as much spellcraft as we possibly can. All my witches, please put that shit out there, please. But that doesn't mean that just because this astrology is supporting the energy of that happening, that it will necessarily happen. This is just a time in which we could potentially or likely will see progress made in that direction, or we will see politicians kicking and screaming and creating distractions or diversions to their mess that they're already making, which we have clearly seen with the war in Iran. We have seen that with back and forth relations between the US and Israel. We have seen that with ICE being domestic terrorists to all of us, even though they're mislabeling every single other person who disagrees with them as such. Different conversation, different day, but you see the points that I'm making here. There's a lot of correlations between these planetary themes by sign, by placement, by aspect. And that brings me to the next point, which is Black Moon Lilith. She was just recently retrograde in Scorpio. She went direct, and by the time of this full moon, she is ingressed directly into Sagittarius. And this transit of having Black Moon Lilith recently in Scorpio, she was exposing the manipulative, dark, corrupt aspects of the shadow patriarchy. She was revealing the shadow masculine and shaming him and making him feel all of what she has been pigeonholed into feeling for the entirety of her existence. And moving into Sagittarius, she says, okay, well, now that you've gotten a taste of your own medicine, how does it fucking feel? And I'm going to go run wild and free. I'm going to go do what I want now. I'm going to go say the things that are on my mind. I'm going to go express my truth, and you're not going to fucking hold me back. That is what Black Moon Lilith in Sagittarius is saying. And especially during this full moon of all the greed and the corruption being lit up by the light being reflected by the full moon, this is on a conscious and unconscious level bringing up a lot of feelings from the divine feminine of her sacred rage. And in a Jupiter ruled sign like Sagittarius, and the ruler of Sagittarius, Jupiter, being exalted in Cancer right now, that is being expanded, 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 expanded. The emotions behind that are being exacerbated. There is no stone left unturned by Black Moon Lilith in this time. And once she moves into Capricorn and Aquarius and Pisces, obviously through the last signs of the zodiac, she will just continue to do that more so and in different ways that even allow for more structure, dismantling of patriarchal forces and energy in the Saturnian signs, and of course, finally, the Jupiterian sign of Pisces, along with the Neptune rulership there, she's going to be dissolving the illusions around it as well. So, with that being said, let's talk about the couple of themes that we have going on here. Obviously, other than the things that we've already talked about, like the title of this episode suggests, we have agitation and anticipation. We are all, and if you're not, then you're corrupt as fuck, but we are all agitated that the world is so capable of doing such good things with the power that certain people have in the positions of their authority, but that those exact people in those corrupt positions of power choose not to, and they make it a living hell for the rest of us. Now, Pluto, again, the ruler of Scorpio, is the Roman god of the underworld, and what the patriarchy, Christianity, Catholicism, modern day Abrahamic religions have deemed as quote-unquote hell, or bad, or dark, or evil. Now, in certain contexts with astrology, Pluto really does, as a planet, talk about some really fucked up things. But in this context, in this particular theme of agitation and anticipation, we're talking about it objectively as the place of quote-unquote hell, rather than it being, necessarily an enlightened frequency of this wealth and abundance that is extracted from the shadow frequency. Yes, that is important. We are not just only going to spiritually bypass the density of our human suffering through the love and light, false light guru bullshit. That's not what I'm here. I'm not here to sugarcoat astrology for you. I'm not here to hold your hand and walk you through everything. We are grown people, and we have to respond to reality like adults. And sometimes life is fucking hell. Heaven and hell are not places to go to after we die. They are existences, they are frequencies, they are consciousnesses, they are realities on planet Earth. We can attune to either one at any time, depending on the quality of our experience that is yielded to us by the condition of our human existence. That's not necessarily to say that free will does not play a part. It can and it does, but not for every single person. And to deny that humanity to certain people who do not have said free will choice denies them of their humanity, period, and really makes you just look like a fucking asshole. And I don't care what kind of Abraham Hicks law of attraction type bullshit you want to throw in here. Cool if you believe in that, cool if that works for you, but chances are it's only working for you because you sit in a position of privilege, or you sit in a Western society that is capitalizing off of marginalized societies in other countries and other parts of the world. So if you can acknowledge that, then you kind of wake up to realizing that heaven and hell coexist at the same time. Your hell and your heaven can happen at any given point. It's not just a mental, emotional response or choice that you make in response to your reality. Hell is something that is created by humans. Heaven is something that is created by humans. And if we work together and we strive together to create something that is more heavenly or more hellish, like is what is happening right now in the political sphere, then that is what we experience. So you cannot sit here and deny somebody else's hell just because you're sitting in your little slice of heaven. So a lot of people right now are experiencing hell, and that is human. That is not okay to a sense of moral alignment and moral justification, but it is quote unquote okay conditionally to feel like you're in hell because of what is happening in the world. It is not your responsibility to sit here and dictate who is or isn't in hell based off of how you fucking feel about it. You can just honor the humanity of it, you can honor the density of it, you can honor the struggle of it, and you can move the fuck on and keep responding to reality in the way that best serves you and all beings. So with that being said, we are, just addressing the adaptation of that, but the anticipation side of this is that we are all anticipating a better world, and all the while feeling like no matter what we do that it isn't good enough because of the current state of the hell that we're experiencing. And that is totally valid. That's where that imposter syndrome can sneak in and become a saboteur in the state of well-being that we do get to have, or that some of us are yielded as a result of where we live, what society we're a part of, and where we are geographically speaking or socioeconomically speaking. But with that being said, it still does feel hopeless sometimes, but you can't let that win and take over, especially if you're able to have food in your fridge, air conditioned and clean water to drink. You can take a shower, you have clean clothes, and you have some sort of money sitting in your bank account, whether that's enough to get you through the next week, the next day, the next year, what have you. If you have your survival needs met, then you are okay. Even if your mind, even if your mental, whatever, what have you, conditioning of like response to the world, or if you're just, similar to me and you have autism and ADHD, you do also, this is not an ableist thinking, this is not an ableist sentence, so do not pigeonhole that to me. We do have the free will choice to acknowledge the parts of our lives that are okay, that are safe, that are stable, even if we don't feel it intrinsically in our nervous system. We can honor two truths at the same time. That's why there is nuance. That's why this is the realm of duality. That's why we exist between polarities in a spectrum, because there is a gray area. You don't have to be okay or happy or just sad and depressed. You can be both at the same time. You can be very sad and depressed about what is happening in the world while also being happy and grateful about the survival that you get to have. There is that gray area for you to move like an infinity loop between the polarities. There is forever that space in that spectrum. So honor that. Honor all of the density of it. Honor all of the enlightenment of it. Honor every ounce of joy that you do get to feel. Honor every ounce of despair that moves through your body. This is a time where all of it is being brought up. There's the softening Venusian Taurus energy that's happening. Great, we love to see it. But there's also all of this Martian, Plutonian, Scorpionic energy at the same time. So it's gonna all be there all at once. Don't let yourself fall short of honoring any part of your human experience for this. So there's no way really out of this energy. There's only going to be a way through it. And again, that is to honor the density of the human experience right now, rather than seeking ways to bypass it or escape from it, obviously, unless it affects your well-being. If it threatens your life or it threatens your safety, please do what is best for you. Seek out what you need. Communicate with the people who you feel you can trust. Do what is best for you. And in the same breath, for the people who don't have that as a part of their experience, you need to honor the duality of the density of the human experience. Period. Full stop. Last thing, ways to cope with this: crying, somatic shaking, listening to angry or sad music, or just emotional music that helps you process or move the emotion through your field instead of it getting stuck in one energy center or in a certain place in your field. Talk with people that you can trust about how you feel or what you're thinking or what's going on for you in your reality. And most importantly, take any action, whether that is big, whether that is small, whether that is insignificant to you perceivably or somebody else perceivably. It does not matter. Take action in the direction of what you can perceive to be progress, even if it is hard or feels insurmountable at times, because any progress forward is still progress. With the Chironian influence, there is the shadow of imperfection and the agitation of perfectionism going on with that archetype. And that is something that can paralyze you. That is the sort of arrow in the foot where we get the phrase with Chiron being the person who had Cupid's arrow hit the foot and that venom paralyzing him to not be able to heal himself, but only still be able to heal other people. That perfectionism is the arrow in the foot. So do not let the imposter syndrome of everything having to be perfect or create as much progress as you ideally want it to stand in the way of you making any progress at all. This is not a time to let the mental monsters stand in your way of making forward movement. Okay? So if this is all very overwhelming, which I'm sure it absolutely is, it was a little bit of a doozy for me to be typing out all of this and looking at the chart right now of what this full moon will be. And if you don't feel like making the sense of this all by yourself and decoding the information of this for your specific natal blueprint and trying to understand it for yourself, I would be more than happy to help you out in a lunar luminosity reading. In that reading, I give you insight on the energy for this full moon the day before, the day of, and the day after, so you know what to expect in that 3-day period of the illumination of the full moon. And I will give you insight on how to integrate this energy and answer whatever questions that you have that I can with the time that we have in the session. So I will link that down below in the description box or in the show notes. If you are interested in booking that session with me, I would again be more than happy to support you in that way. And with that being said, I will go ahead and leave this episode here. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Hummingbird Arcana Podcast. If you enjoyed and you are watching on YouTube, then let me know by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on that post notification bell so you're notified every time a new podcast episode hits your feed. And let me know down below in the comment section, where is Scorpio in your chart? What part of this is going to be activated for you? If you're not interested in booking a session with me, I want to hear from you. What's going on? What's happening in your natal chart with this full moon? Let me know. I'm very curious. And if you're listening instead of watching on YouTube on a stream platform, then hi, hello, how are you? I would humbly implore you to leave a rating of the podcast and a review. And in that comment section, let me know what episodes you are looking forward to. Also, similar to my YouTube friends, where is this activating in your chart with this Scorpio full moon? And let me know any ideas for future episodes or any guests you would like me to have on the podcast. So again, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Hummingbird Arcana. I am Jo Hummingbird. It is always my greatest pleasure and honor to assist you in awakening you to your cosmic divinity. Many blessings and take care, my beautiful friends.